The stigma surrounding the disabled community. In a perfect world, everyone will be created equal. There will not be any discrimination made by people based on race, color, creed, gender, age, sexual orientation, religious belief, ability, or disability. Discrimination comes primarily in two forms: direct and indirect. Direct discrimination is when someone treats you differently or worse simply because of who you are. Indirect discrimination is when there's a practice, policy, or rule which applies to everyone in the same way, but it has a worse effect on some people than others. For people living with disabilities, visible or invisible, they tend to face discrimination head on. There has been an unfair and biased stigma placed on this group of people. The discrimination they face can and does occur in school, the workplace, and social atmospheres. Children are often oblivious to certain things. How they are treated is not one of them. School can already be challenging for the average child. Children with disabilities have things a bit harder due to circumstances they have no control over. No matter how big or small the impact of their disability affects them, they may have to deal with negative and unfair treatment at some point during their life. Unlawful discrimination can apply to every aspect of school life. It covers all school activities such as extracurricular activities, leisure activities, after school clubs, homework clubs, sports activities, school trips, and school facilities. Thankfully, there are federal laws put into place to help make their school experience as close to normal as possible. The American with Disabilities Act states, no qualified individual with a disability shall, on the basis of disability, be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of services, of programs, or activities of a public entity, or be subjected to discrimination by any public entity. Another reputable source of inclusion outlined for children with disabilities is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also called IDEA. The IDEA is a law that guarantees a free public education and related services for over 6.5 million children with disabilities. Parent involvement is very necessary to help relate to the teachers the challenges and accommodations that each child has. No children are alike. That is why it is imperative for parents to be directly involved with their child's educational environment and not leave it up to the school to make necessary accommodations. The ADA and IDEA laws, along with parent involvement, will help reduce the child's feeling of being ostracized by their peers due to having a disability of some sort. If reasonable accommodations are not made, then a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights can be filed against the school. The workplace is another environment in which people with disabilities are discriminated in. Workplace discrimination is more prevalent than we actually know of due to the fact that it is easier to hide and harder to prove. The stigma surrounding the disabled community in the workplace is at times a direct form of discrimination. In the case of merchandiser Jewel Osco, it had to settle a $3.2 million disability discrimination settlement after a case was filed against it by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. According to the EEOC, Jewel Osco had a policy of firing disabled individuals at the end of their medical leave instead of making reasonable accommodations that would allow them to turn to work. Besides employers that will not make accommodations for the disabled, there are employers that will not hire disabled persons. Some think that they are abnormal or deviant and are agents of resistance. Promoting workplace normalcy puts the employer in control. Providing reasonable accommodations for persons with disabilities undermines the authority of a supervisor. Workplace normalcy should be readily available for everyone. People with disabilities should not be purposely denied work opportunities because they are different. Social atmospheres can also be a scene of exclusion for the disabled. They are often overlooked and treated as outcasts. They are often excluded from activities with friends and family. This unspoken stigma surrounding persons with disabilities is due to miseducation and or lack of information about disabilities. This is often because they are perceived as being unable to live a normal life and having to be dependent on others. When in actuality, their life is normal to them, it is others that do not know how to interact with them. Research demonstrates that attitudes toward the disability vary depending on social context, with the formation of dating and marriage relationships with people with disabilities being seen as less favorable than less intimate working relationships. Social norms may be permissive enough to allow friendships with people with disabilities, but draw the line when it comes to romantic partnerships. Just because a person is physically different than the average able bodied person does not mean that they do not deserve friendship or companionship. This stigma unfairly isolates disabled persons and is a form of indirect discrimination. People with disabilities face discrimination because people are judgmental and uninformed about disabilities and what they entail. Having a disability does not make someone a less of a person, deviant, or an agent of resistance. Having a disability simply means that someone has an unforeseen condition that requires them to adjust their way of living. Able-bodied people should not feel intimidated about making minor adjustments to accommodate a disabled person. Having an open dialogue with disabled persons may be one way to help educate able-bodied persons on the nature of their differences. Hopefully, this will help lessen exclusion in schools, workplaces, and social atmospheres.